What is up, YouTube? This is Hypergon, your chef with the cat, back again for another video. Now, as many of you know, it's been a while since Konami released our last ban list, the last one actually going back as far as April 11th of this year. So we've had a fair amount of time since the last one, and it stands to reason that we may be seeing the next format showing up any day now. Now, realistically, since the gap between that was from November until April, I may be jumping the gun a bit. However, I'm going off of the premise that prior to them just doing it whenever they wanted, Konami released them every 3 months, and it has been 3 months since the last one. Arguably a little bit longer than that. So, I figure better early than late, and so I will be discussing today what I believe will be on the upcoming ban list. Now, I'm not talking about too much, it's a fairly small list, but either way, this is just what I think and would like to see happen with the upcoming format. Let's get started. So, starting things off, we have the first of the top tier decks that I feel needs to be addressed, Cosmo Dark Destroyer. Now, the Cosmos themselves are a fairly formidable deck, and after the destruction of Pepe, they were pretty much top dog, along with a few other decks which we'll get to in a moment. And of the Cosmos, I feel like Dark Destroyer is the one that does need to be hit the most. Now, the reason for this being that, one, it's a fairly powerful monster, being 3,000 attack points, and has the amazing ability of being able to destroy a card when it's summoned. On top of that, should anything ever happen to it, it can special summon a level 7 or lower Cosmo from the deck. And if that wasn't enough, it is incapable of being targeted by your opponent's card effects, which makes this card quite the formidable threat to deal with, and honestly, it almost feels like a little bit too much. I could see this card potentially going down to 2, maybe even 1. I feel like banning it might be a touch too much, so I don't see it getting hit any more than that, but I do feel like this is the Cosmo card that does need to get hit. Next up, we have another top tier deck, the Monarchs, and the card I feel needs to be hit within Monarchs is Pantheism of the Monarchs. Now, most of the Monarch stuff isn't really too bad in and of itself. However, this card adds an ungodly amount of consistency to the deck, serving as both a search and draw power card. The first effect allows it to discard a Monarch spell trap in order to draw 2 cards. However, you can also banish this card from the graveyard, reveal 3 Monarch spell traps from the deck, your opponent chooses 1, and then the others are shuffled into the deck, while the one they chose is added to the hand. However, since another card in the deck, Tenacity of the Monarchs, just allows you to search out a Monarch spell trap by revealing a Monarch monster in your hand, most players will just search out 2 Tenacities and whatever they really want, or just 3 of whatever it is they really want, and ultimately still get what they're looking for. Very rarely will you see a Monarch player actually give the player any sort of choice in what's added to their hand. They're basically just saying, alright, do you let me deck thin, or do you just give me what I want? So, again, I could see this card being put to 2, potentially 1. However, I feel like it's more likely to be put to 2 than anything else. I feel like 1 might be a bit harsh of a hit, but honestly, for me, this card is a little too good in terms of adding consistency to the deck. Next up is kind of an interesting one, because the deck itself isn't really a problem. However, it's more what it has allied itself with. And the next deck we're talking about is the Phantom Knights. Now again, Phantom Knights by themselves aren't that bad. They're just a rank 3/rank 4 Xyz deck that's honestly not even really that noteworthy. Card archetypes like Burning Abyss can do rank 3 much better. And that is what they have allied themselves with. Phantom Knight Burning Abyss has actually become one of the most powerful rogue decks out there. And for that reason, I feel like the Phantom Knight half needs to be hit. The reason I'm not aiming for the Burning Abyss side is I feel like Burning Abyss has kind of gotten enough crap in recent ban lists that, honestly, that deck is pretty much dead on its own. So, it does need things like Phantom Knights to be relevant. However, I'd argue that Phantom Knights almost make it too relevant. The first card I could see potentially being hit out of them would be Ancient Cloak. And again, I could see that maybe going to 2. You could argue 1, but I feel like 2 might be more fair. The first effect is honestly not that important, it's just a small stat buff. However, this card, like all other cards in the Phantom Knight archetype, can be banished from the graveyard for an additional effect. His effect allows him to search out any Phantom Knight card from the deck upon being banished from the graveyard, which is ridiculously good, especially since he's a Dark-type monster, and there's several cards that allow you to send a Dark-type monster from the deck to the graveyard, so getting guys like him there is pretty easy. The other card I could arguably see also potentially going to 2, maybe 1, but that again feels like I'm pushing it a bit, would be Phantom Knight of Silent Boots. Now, this card has a much better initial effect than the other one. This one allows it to special summon as long as you control a Phantom Knight monster, so this card is essentially what starts with the Xyz engine. On top of that, if it's banished from the graveyard, you can add a Phantom Knight spell trap card from your deck to your hand. Now, on top of being a searcher and a special summoner, that just makes this card incredibly powerful for the deck. But, at the same time, it is also what keeps the deck going, so I feel like hitting this thing any lower than 2 might be unfair, and even hitting it to 2 itself might potentially be a bit too much for the deck. So, again, I'm not 100% on which cards of the Phantom Knights really do need to be hit. I'm just putting out the things I feel could be hit. However, the one I feel like most definitely would deserve the banhammer would be Phantom Knight's Fogblade. So, this card is actually just ridiculously powerful because it can either stun or protect a monster and allows for special summons. Its first effect activates by targeting one effect monster in which that monster's effect is negated and it cannot attack. However, that monster cannot be attacked either. Then, if it leaves the field, Fogblade is destroyed. Then, you can banish it from the graveyard at any point to target one Phantom Knight monster in your graveyard and special summon it. However, it's banished when it leaves the field. Now, while that may seem like a drawback, since this is an Xyz deck, it's never technically going to leave the field, since you're only ever really going to use this for extra Xyz material. So, it's never going to leave the field, it's just going to become Xyz material and will ultimately be sent to the graveyard again. So, this card for me, I feel like would almost have to go to 1. I could see someone argue 2, but it almost feels too powerful for that, so if any card in the Phantom Knight archetype would be hit, I feel like Fogblade would be it, and it'd almost have to go to 1. Now this next one for me, it's kind of addressing a rogue issue I've been seeing going around, and one that I really feel needs to be addressed. And that is Brilliant Fusion and or Gem Knight Selenite. Now, Gem Knights by themselves are really not anything noteworthy. They're not making any impact in the competitive meta. They're not really that tier. They're just alright. However, a lot of decks have been teching in these two cards because of Selenite Knight's amazing ability, allowing the player to get an extra normal summon. Not an extra normal summon of a Gem Knight monster, but just an extra normal summon, which is insanely powerful. On top of that, Brilliant Fusion takes monsters from the deck for its materials. So that essentially gives you a very vast pool of monsters access to. Especially since the only thing that Selenite Knight needs is a Gem Knight monster and a light monster. So as long as you have those things, this tech will work for you. And that's really not that difficult in today's competitive meta. So, what I could see realistically happening would be either Brilliant Fusion being put to 1, or, and I really don't want this to be what happens, but Selenite being banned. Now, I don't feel like Selenite deserves to be banned, however, most players only run one Selenite. So, realistically speaking, the only way to address that issue would be to ban Selenite. However, I feel like the correct card to hit would actually be Brilliant Fusion, which I could either see going to 1 or even potentially itself being banned. It just feels a little bit too good to have so many decks just being able to have additional normal summons. So, yeah, it needs to be hit in some way, shape, or form. And finally, Selenite River. Selenite Knights did not really get a hit in the format everyone thought they would when they won Worlds. And honestly, I feel like this deck, while not really that relevant, does need something. The fact that this card can just compulse the entire field except for itself is ridiculous, because it leaves your opponent wide open, it gives Selenite players all their resources back. It's just almost too powerful of a card, and it needs to be hit to 1, potentially even banned. And to conclude everything, I have these last options, which really is just mostly considered a why not. Wind-up carriers and Magi. What are wind-ups going to do? Inzektor Hornet. What are Inzektors going to do with an extra Hornet? Infernity Archfiend. While Infernities may potentially get a little bit of a boost from 2 Archfiends, I don't see it being enough to actually make an impact on the meta. Stratos, they're not going to gain anything, they're just going to be searching out more Shadow Mists. Mole, it takes up a normal summon and really is not that worth it, so who cares? Rescue Rabbit, normal decks aren't that good. Even normal Pendulums really wouldn't even use this thing at 2, so again, what's it going to hurt? Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the End. This thing has been errated and is no longer really that worthwhile, so as long as you get the errated version, it can come back. Dragon Ravine, I'm a Unity player, so naturally I'd want this back. However, with Blue Eye stuff, I realistically don't see it happening. I'm just being hopeful. Heavy Storm, because we need some back row hate. And same with Harpy's Feather Duster, I don't care which one, they both have drawbacks, just pick one. And then Bottomless Trap Hole and Solemn Judgment can go up by 1, because honestly, I just kind of want to see what would happen for a format if that were to happen. Do I think it will happen? No, but then again, I didn't think Snatch Dude was going to come back for a format either, so really, who knows? And with that, that is my thoughts on what's going to happen with this upcoming ban list. What do you guys think is going to happen? Do you agree with a lot of my choices, or are there some you think that may be hit? Was I being too soft on some decks, or was I being far too harsh on them? Let me know what you guys think. Of course, you can also let me know your thoughts and opinions down on my Facebook page. You can find a link in the description. I update it fairly regularly to let you guys know what's going on. Of course, don't forget to also like this video and subscribe to my channel for further content. Until next time, peace.